President Bola Tinubu has been applauded for issuing a directive mandating a substantial reduction in official entourage for both domestic and international events. Presidential spokesperson Ajuri Ngelale, who made this known on Tuesday while briefing newsmen at the State House Abuja, said the directive, amounting to a 60% reduction, applies to the Office of the President, Office of the Vice President, Office of the First Lady, ministries, departments, and agencies. According to him, henceforth, for foreign trips, the President, Vice President, and the First Lady will be accompanied by 25 and 5 officials, respectively. While for the local trips, the President will be accompanied by 25 officials and 15 and 10 officials for Vice President and the First Lady, respectively. However, concerned stakeholders have encouraged the President not to stop there, that he should go further to cut down other areas where resources are being wasted. Joining us to discuss this latest cost-cutting measure by the presidency and how far it should go in order to address other wasteful spending by the government is Johnson Chukwu, CEO of Cowry Asset Management. Welcome to the morning show. Hi, Chief. Johnson Chukwu, good to see you again. We did
Good morning, Your Excellency.
How many days?
Thank you for having me.
I spoke with you on Sunday. Good to have you on the morning show. Good morning. Well, quickly, the president cutting official entourage, local and foreign, after that backlash over the trip to Dubai, where Nigeria was rubbing shoulders with countries like China and Brazil in terms of size of delegation. Now, some people have hailed this as a good move, as an indication that this will result in the plugging of wastage. But some people say it does not go far enough, that it looks like tokenism. It looks like a symbolic gesture. In fact, some people even go a step further to say that it will be difficult to enforce because the absolute figures that the president in particular will travel with is not just determined by the number of people who accompany him. There is, a template for presidential travel that you may not necessarily just alter like that. What do you think?
Well, Ruben, my approach is that any saving is worth it. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 kobo that is saved or 2 kobo. The concept of saving is, or the concept of building a reserve or building a saving is, you must make sure the rate of arrival is higher than the rate of exit. And at every point where you narrow the exit route, you are increasing the opportunity of accumulation. That is the concept of Q, is that the rate of arrival must be higher than the rate of exit. And like I said, as you narrow the exit route, you are giving breaking provision for an increase in accumulation. It doesn't matter whether anybody says it's cosmetic or not. It may not be as far-reaching as we all desire, but it's one step forward. And I think the key thing would be in implementation. We shouldn't be situations where we have rules and policies of government and they are observed in abeyance. So the problem is not whether this issue will go, this cost cutting will go a long way in addressing the verbose or obtuse structure of governance. But let's take one step at a time, and then the more we move forward, and then we keep eliminating this, we're going to get to a point where we achieve some level of momentum that it becomes difficult to reverse. Unfortunately, we had done something close to this during Obasanjo's government, but we gradually began to chip it off, and we got to where we are, where we have a provision for federal government non-recurrent expenditure for 2024, about 8.7 trillion naira. And because if you consider that amount is higher than the total revenue the federal government got to the first 9 months of this year. So something must be done to cut down that. We have made provision for about 9.1 trillion naira in deficit, which will likely go beyond that if we maintain the current budget structure or the expenditure profile. And remember, you must bear in mind that some of the expenditures in the budget are non-discretionary, like your debt service of 8.27 trillion naira. It's non-discretionary. You must pay the interest on those debts. So what we can tackle is what we should focus on, government overhead. Let's cut down every inch we have space to do. Let's applaud him for what he has done and hope that will ginger him to do more. It's not far-reaching, granted, but like I also said, the problem would be, can it be enforced? The devil is always in the enforcement or implementation when it comes to the country. It's not a matter of making pronouncements. Remember the immediate past president. He made pronouncement and said the IG should relocate to the volatile areas, I think North Central, I think other Plateau or Benue. And he came back to us and he didn't know the IG did not go, and nothing happened after that. So the key thing is, who will enforce this? Also, remember that when this particular political party came into power, they said they're going to sail down on the federal government presidential fleet. We rather acquired more. That is a core cost element. Other cost elements are building, which is why some people have expressed diverse opinion on this. We can't be buying more vehicles, because once you buy more vehicles for the first lady or whatever office, you're going to recruit more drivers, and you are going to maintain those vehicles. You're going to buy fuel for those vehicles. We can't be renovating presidential quarters that are not being used. We don't need, at the point when we have serious financial economic challenge, we don't need to renovate Durham Barracks. And I'm not sure anybody will go and stay there. So the key thing, we shouldn't be giving with one hand, and actually, we shouldn't be running from one hand and giving with two hands. So that's what we need to focus on. One, this is in the right direction, but we must not create other expense heads that will overshadow whatever we're going to save from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Two things you said that I would really center on. First is that the devil is in the detail, and also the implementation of this announcement. Also, in the last administration, which you cited, the president had said he wasn't recognized in the office of the First Lady, but we know what happened throughout that administration. That didn't seem to be the case in terms of implementation. So it would be great to see how that would work. And then when you talk about other ways to cost cuts, there are suggestions as to perhaps even cutting travel, the frequency of travel for not just the president, the vice president, but heads of ministries, departments, and agencies, and just on a need-to-go basis as they're cutting down on number of people. But let me ask in terms of further cuts. So beyond the presidency, which includes obviously the vice president, the first lady, is also the ministries. How do we ensure that we're able to streamline costs in ministries, departments, and agencies, where we're also able to trim duplicated efforts in some of these ministries? Is it possible in order to cut costs? And on the other side, whilst we're cutting costs, we're also looking at generating revenue. So both must work side by side. The president said during the during his budget speech that they were going to check on the MDA's performances to ensure that they were aligning with budgetary performance in terms of generating revenue. Can you share with us some ways where we can tap into the efficiencies of these ministries to begin to generate some revenue for the nation?
Okay, let's start from the issue of cost cutting. We have a report from the Steve Orosanya Committee on harmonizing the ministries, agencies, and department (MDAs) and eliminating those overlaps. We have not done that. We've carried that report for almost 20 years. We've not implemented it. Clearly, there are several agencies of government that are overlapping. I give an instance in terms of law enforcement or domestic security. You have the Nigerian Police Force. You have the civil defense, and then you have the road traffic wing of Nigerian Police. You have the Federal Road Safety Agency, and these are clearly duplications. There's no reason why you shouldn't have the traffic wing of the police doing the work of the Road Safety Agency, and then there is no reason why you should not merge the civil defense with the police, because they are basically doing the same thing, domestic securities or homeland securities. But we have three agencies. We have that in multiple sectors of the economy. So the first thing we need to do, if we need to cut down on the cost, because if you look at the government expenditure profile, you realize that the one that has witnessed the strongest growth over the past 10 years is personnel cost, added in addition to debt service. So that they have recorded the highest growth we've seen, principally because we have kept building on these multiple agencies of government as a way of giving and creating jobs for the boys. So we need to tackle that. Until we do that, and that's when we're actually going to be cutting close to this bone, that's when you're going to effectively eliminate the fat that we have in terms of government structure. That's the core of what people are looking for. And until we do that, people will actually say it's cosmetic. But like I said, let's even celebrate this one and push for more. And probably at some point we are going to get momentum. The second part of your question is in terms of revenue generation. Before I go to the revenue generation, the another thing you mentioned is the issue of frequent government travels, attending global events. We must always ask ourselves as a people, what is the value we're going to extract from any of the global events? COP28 was complete waste. It was a jamboree because we are not at the stage in our economic development where our priority is environmental remediation. And we need to even address some of the key issues. China, as a country, did not embrace issue of environmental remediation. I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm saying it's not a priority for a country that's having severe level of poverty. So you have to prioritize. We went to UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, with a large retinue of aides and all sorts of people. It was not necessary. So for a country, when you are in a situation like where we are today, you must rationalize every of your expenses. Every kobo that we spend that is public expenditure, we must rationalize it. Then back to the aspect in relation to revenue. There are agencies of government that are basically revenue generation, what they call government-owned enterprises. The key challenge we have today is that their governance structure does not make for proper accountability. They don't have the appropriate corporate governance structure because the people who superintend these agencies are appointed based on political interest, not based on professional competence. So we need to ask ourselves, if these agencies of government or government-owned agencies are our own private businesses, are we going to allow the people who run them today to run them? Can we really appoint the best of the people to run them and let the revenue generated from this be what is used to intervene in the economy? If we have a vibrant economy, even those we are trying to create jobs for will be comfortable because the economy will lift up. The same when the tide is high, lift up every boat. Instead of putting people in those agencies that we have that are based purely on political considerations. That takes us to the issues that we are witnessing in the recent past, principally because there is not even a process of identifying counterparties. There must be a structured and regularly and fully adhered to structure for onboarding counterparties for government agencies. That's those that provide services, because what you find out is that all Dick, Tom, and Harry are allowed to provide services to these agencies, and they act as a conduit for fraudulent or padding of expenses and inefficient supply system that will lead to what you may call not getting full value for the money. So these agencies are not operated optimally. We first must make sure they operate optimally. And the life case is Nigerian liquefied natural gas. It is one of the strongest government investments. It's one of the ones that gives us the highest level of dividend. Government does not interfere in the structure of governance of that entity. We can have the same thing in the Nigerian Ports Authority. We can have the same thing in the Nigerian Maritime Authority. We can have the same thing even Nigerian Television Authority. Your station is a privately run enterprise, but today it has one of the widest level of audience or viewership. But look at the one that is an octopus, the Nigerian Television Authority. Because of the governance structure, nobody is interested in watching their program. I'm not saying it to slide them, but I'm just saying that we can also make them to be one of the competitive media houses in the country. So there are several government owned enterprises that can be viably operated, that will generate revenue for the government and declare dividend to the benefit of all of us. Because of their governance, weak corporate governance structure and management, they are sub-optimizing.
Okay, Chief Chukwu, well, time is going very fast, but two things. One of the complaints about the list rolled out by the president is that the VP has been given a delegation of 5 for international travels, the same 5 for the First Lady. And some people have raised the question that is the office of the First Lady be equated with that of the Vice President? And in any case, why should the official entourage list allocation list include office of the First Lady, office of the Vice President's wife, considering the fact that these are not officials of state. Well, people have brought it up out there. I don't know what you think. It's always very delicate talking about other people's wives. But I think we can also use this opportunity to ask you about what the CBN did yesterday, sacking the boards and management of Union Bank, Keystone Bank, and also Polaris Bank. Your take on that? I mean, we can't have a financial expert in the studio and we don't bring up the most current subject in your sector. Those two issues.
Okay. I would ordinarily sidestep commenting on issues around how many delegates should the vice president go with and that how many delegates the wife of the president should go with. The only comment I will make there is that the wife of the president is not recognized in the Constitution. And there's no reason why, when we are making pronouncements and declaring structures of government expenses, public expenses, the wife of the president and the wife of the vice president have no business coming in there. They are still private citizens. So they should not be a subject of discussion when we're talking of how do we spend our public resources. So that's my comment on that. But in terms of the number of people going with the vice president or the president, elsewhere in the world, you don't need a retinue of 100 people to go with you to an international conference. P2B will always say that, look, this will only go to cause a lot of disturbance, because when you are at a conference speaking, they are not going to be there in the conference. Many of them will be drinking beer somewhere or doing some more things that does not glorify the name of the country. So you don't need a number more than 5. The president, because he might need additional security, but I don't think the number is the issue. A 10-man team going with the vice president, or 15-man or so, the 10-man team, 10-man team going with the president should be enough on international trips. I've gone to countries and I've attended events where there are presidents of other countries, and you don't see that large crowd of people following them around. So that's one aspect to it. Then, as it relates to the decision that was taken by the central bank yesterday to dissolve the boards of 3 or 4 banks. I've seen 2 reports, one saying Union Bank, Polaris Bank, and Keystone Bank, and that one added Titan Trust Bank. So, but the basic thing is that issues around the acquisition of these 3 banks were public knowledge to those of us in the financial services industry. It's just that it was at a period when we had a fellow who does not do any bad, who did not do any bad, or couldn't do any bad, any evil, or couldn't do any wrong, as we say. Or a king who couldn't do any wrong. So at that point, in as much as it was discussed publicly, but in muted groups, that this was the structure of acquisition of these banks. So it didn't come as a surprise to us when we saw the Obazee report that indicated clearly that this financial institution were not acquired by private capital, but by all form of structure. And in addition to that, the intervention we saw, given the acquisition method, it should not be surprising to anybody. If you say a financial institution was acquired with public resources in using private entities as conduit, so, and all you just need is lift the veil of incorporation, as we say in legal terms. I'm good thing you're a lawyer. You lift the veil of incorporation and go to the root of who actually owns those entities. And when you do that, you're going to end up with government owning those entities. So the owners of the entity have actually intervened to make sure they appoint people to manage the entities for them.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. The only question I've just wanted to ask, because that was raised up earlier with Dr. Obazee very briefly, is what next in terms of these banks? Because currently they're running, well, at least they're operating currently without a board. At what point do you think would be necessary to institute that? And then just an assurance again to emphasize for depositors with regards to the protection of their deposits and also, of course, shareholders. So what next for these stakeholders?
Okay, in the first place, the central bank has appointed a management team, executive management team for the 3 banks, for 3 of the banks. So you have a management team in place. In terms of the larger board, the non-executive board, and maybe additional executive members to to the board, the central bank will, I believe, will do that in due course. As it relates to shareholders, these banks had originally been nationalized. So the shareholders that we are referring to now are those who are alleged to have surreptitiously acquired these banks through government, through public resources or with public resources. So in effect, you don't have the general shareholding that you had in other banks because the banks were previously nationalized. Polaris Bank was previously Skybank, which was nationalized. Keystone Bank was former Bank PHB that was nationalized. Union Bank is the one that ordinarily you should have ordinary shareholder. But I also know that the acquirers of the Union Bank had actually taken it private by buying out existing shareholders or made it a non-publicly quoted company. I don't think they bought out the existing shareholder, but it is not legally publicly quoted. So the shareholders, so what will be issued in Union Bank is the proportion of the shares of Union Bank that have been acquired through this special purpose vehicle. That's the allegation is that it was funded through public resource. So once that is sorted, the existing shareholders will maintain their shareholding without any disturbance. As it relates to deposits, the central bank in its announcement stated that depositors have nothing to worry about. And I personally don't think the central bank will do anything that will impede on the liabilities of the banks or the rights of depositors to access their funding or the ability of these banks to meet the obligations as and when due. Because once you do that, you're going to affect systemic banking system confidence, and that could lead to a lot, not on these banks, but on other banks. So I think central bank will be, as a lender of last resort, will guarantee the deposits of this bank and make sure they continue to operate effectively.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your brilliant analysis this morning, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. It's always good to have you on the morning show. I look forward to your next appearance.